What is up, you guys? My name is Sammy Robbins. Welcome to my channel. I am the owner and founder of Alive and Free Consulting along with my husband, Spencer Robbins, and you are about to watch some of the interviews we did of some of the clients that we worked with. They are phenomenal women. We love them so much, and they got such crazy results that we wanted to share it with you. So if you love this interview and if you have seen any other of our YouTube videos, word vomit, then please like and subscribe to our channel, comment and share it with a friend. It really helps support our channel. Thanks so much, and I hope you enjoy. We're super excited to chat with you. I really wanted to talk to you. Your story is a little bit different than the ladies we've been interviewing lately. So we've been interviewing a lot of women that have gone from being totally single, joining our program, to serious dating relationships, engagement, and even marriage. But whenever I was thinking about you, I was like, man, her story is so different, but you're so powerful and you've gotten so much freedom and so much breakthrough. And so I just kind of want to hear a little bit about what your process has looked like.
Yeah, because it's just a disservice. It's a huge disservice to women to just say like, oh, this is the definer or identifier of health. It's like all of a sudden you're in this relationship, months later, it's like, it's cool for women that have gotten into that place. Yeah. Ultimately, I love seeing people that just love themselves and don't need anything around them. It's
a cool byproduct, like being in a relationship. It's the cool fruit of the process, but it doesn't define what health is. So I want to hear from you, like, what's your process been like overall?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a big question. I think I started that process several years ago, and I'd been on that journey for a while, but ultimately I was finding a disconnect between my head and my heart. So I knew truth in my mind, but on a heart level of experiencing it and my emotions lining up to it just was not there for me. So that kind of began the journey. And one of the things in the process, specifically in working with you guys, that I was realizing is that although in my head I knew that truth was that I was supposed to be okay on my own and outside of a relationship, and that sounded really good, and my head knew that that was true, that didn't line up with any of my emotions or my feelings at a heart level where it was authentic to me. And I think I just got tired of not living authentically and going, this just needs to stop somewhere. So for me, it was kind of where the journey began of what does that look like, and how do I get there, and what's the process? So that for me was the big one. And I wanted to be the confident woman that said, I don't need a man or I don't need a relationship. I'm fine on my own. But the honest answer was I wasn't experiencing that inside, and my actions and my emotions and my lifestyle was not lining up with that. So that was big for me.
Yeah. And you came to us in a relationship. I know that you guys were talking about engagement.
Yeah.
You're talking about engagement, and you were fighting like hell to get that relationship super healthy. I remember every single time you showed up on a coaching call, you were like, here's all of my crap. Here are my problems. Here are his problems. What am I doing wrong? What is he doing wrong? How can we actually get to health in this? And you were fighting like crazy, but would you tell me a little bit about what that relationship was like and the process and where you're at now?
Yes. So that relationship was interesting. I had already gone through quite a bit of my heart process and journey and worked a lot of things out inside. I had already come out of a failed marriage. I was divorced. So I had a lot of history behind that relationship. But with that history came, there's only, I believe, only so far you can go in your healing without actually then experiencing and walking it out, and then more stuff comes up. So that relationship, although I had done a lot of healing and a lot of heart work, it brought up probably the deepest layers inside of me where I still needed healing, and those like core identity pieces inside. So what that relationship felt like were all the deep father wounds, the things that I could identify that felt closest to my childhood of chaos and fighting for love and connection. That relationship matched that really closely. So I had a lot of things in the mix. I had my own pain. I had probably what felt like love for the first time, because I was vulnerable enough to actually connect to a human being on a heart level, which was big. So I was bonding in these certain areas, probably trauma bonds, I'm sure. But nonetheless, it still felt real to me, and it felt like love and connection. And in the mix of that was a lot of pain and bad beliefs that I was still trying to walk out. So I brought that to the table. It was probably a toxic relationship from the beginning, but that part of me that was very codependent and wanted to stay connected and wanted to fight for love. Again, lies coming out of the last marriage that I had, of a failed marriage, of can I stay and can I fight? And what does that look like, to not run away from my stuff? So I had a lot operating in the mix. But I remember coming to you guys and thinking I'd already had an experience of knowing that it was possible to get free, and that it had to be at a heart level. It had to be with people who could actually go in and get the root causes. I was funny. I looked back, probably in the last 10 years, I'd seen 17 different counselors and people that I had worked with. So I came with a huge experience of working with different people to see what works and what doesn't work. And when I saw what you guys brought to the table, one being a husband and a wife, because I feel like that was critical. You know, a man's point of view and a woman's point of view for the mother-father stuff, your spiritual connection, but more importantly, two people that had walked the journey themselves. And I could trust that. I could trust two people who had trenched the trenches, been in the struggle, and were real, and connected to God. So with that being said, when I found you guys, we were in that part of my relationship. We had just walked through a betrayal where my ex had been unfaithful to me. And I knew from having done heart work myself that I was bringing things into that ecosystem, and he was, but there was a lot of confusion as to what was mine and what was his, on a practical level and then on an emotional level. So for me, I needed to trust someone to be guiding me through that, to call me out. I was willing to do the work, and just to point out the things that I needed to continue to grow in. And so when I found you, it felt like the biggest gift from heaven. Because it's rare to find two people that carry all those things in the mix that you can walk something like that out with. And y'all nailed every single one of the things that I was asking God for. So that to me was huge, because I could trust the process.
So good. And I want to hear, that blesses me so much
I
to hear. I'm like drinking it in.
I remember back when I was doing the initial consultation calls, you were on my schedule.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we got to chat, and you were talking about how you wanted this guy you were dating to meet with me at the same time. And I was like, well, typically I want them to want it first, but you wanted it enough for both of you guys.
Yeah.
And I was like the epitome of the relationship.
True.
If one thing is clear, it's that you are like the hungriest person I think that we may have had with our program. And even hearing that you've met with 17 different people, I'm like, wow.
I didn't know that.
That's pretty intense. And one of the things I just wanted to add in here, it's not a question, but I've just loved getting to see how much hunger you have, despite how much you've already walked through in your life, how much history you've already had in confronting things and being vulnerable, and looking to the depths of taking ownership for what's yours. Like, you deserve a lot of credit in this process. And we're just amazed and just even honored and so taken back that you've trusted us so much. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'd love to hear. So you guys ended up cutting off the relationship. Would you tell me a little bit about that process? Because you were fighting. I remember there was a point in time where I had enough equity with you. I knew that you trusted me. I knew that you were open towards me. And so there were a few times I kind of called you out on some different things. And you took massive action steps, and you started standing up for yourself and your heart and what you wanted for your life. But would you tell me about like how that relationship ended, why, and what that process has looked like since?
Yeah. So, you know, when we came to you, my intention and my heart is I am willing to walk through pain and to go through growth with another human being if they're committed to the same process and willing to connect to love, and do whatever it takes to surrender to God, to surrender to a process, but more importantly, a process to connect to love. And I knew that wasn't going to be an easy process. So I knew that that was going to encompass pain. I knew it was going to encompass mistakes. I feel like Spencer did a really great job prefacing that when we started the process of, hey, you know, this is going to be a painful road. And I signed up for that, and I'm okay with that. But as I went into the process, a couple of things happened. One, I was confronted with the areas, and Sam, I feel like this was so critical with you. I'll never forget the moment where I had been avoiding God, much like I avoided my dad, but avoiding conversations with God and with my heart because I was so afraid of what he was going to say. And there was a day that I remember that you had said, I want you to ask God if you have what it takes. And for me, what that was representing is the ability to choose in or choose out of the relationship, but that it's a choice. And at that point, I felt like what was keeping me in the relationship was more fear of experiencing pain than it was a choice at that point. I felt like it was bigger than me and not a choice. And I had been avoiding that because I was afraid God was going to say, no, get out, but I wasn't going to have the strength to do it. And then I was going to have to feel all of the emotions behind that. And so because you had developed that equity and that trust with me, I sat in an uncomfortable conversation with God and I asked him the question and he said, I have what it takes. And I remember in that moment, I didn't believe it, but I knew that he believed in me. And I felt like what that opened up for me was something really pivotal in my walk of growth. And that is just surrender, that I didn't know how I was going to do it or what it looked like to get there. But if I surrendered and I asked him for help, that if he believed in me, that he would get me there. And so that was a big turning point because I felt like for so long, and if you look at my past, getting so much help, it was, let me fix it. I can do this. It was a lot of Kristina and not a lot of depending on God, full surrender and full dependence. And so I met face to face with a situation that I knew I didn't have the strength to overcome at that moment. So I just had opened my heart of, okay, you believe in me and you're going to get me there if you believe that I can. And in parallel to that, I saw my ex walking out a process where he was not committed to the process and not staying committed to connecting with love. And every time I would walk myself into the chaos and the pain and experience continued cycles of lying or betrayal or whatever that was, I was beginning to see that other part of myself beginning to grow up and get stronger and go, this actually is not only disrespectful to you, but it's disrespectful to God and to who he's called you to be and the standards that he has for you. And so there was a moment where I was sitting with my ex and all of his stuff had come up again and stuff that I was familiar with. And I always went to, well, I know why he does what he does. And that's the problem when you go and you start doing heart work is you can understand why people do what they do. And it's an awesome gift, but there's a bend to that gift, right? Yeah. Yeah. And so I had that moment of going, yep, I know why he's doing what he's doing. But because he's not connecting to love and because he hasn't surrendered in the same way that you have, you're now contributing and enabling the same ecosystem. And you've now crossed the line of respect for yourself and for God. And so that part of me, that little girl, felt safe enough to actually listen to the older part of me that was able to rationalize that and understand that on a very practical level. And I ended the relationship on the spot. I got up and I left still with some reservation. It was still a fight inside. I can't say that I left and felt like a champion, like I, had won some amazing thing, but nonetheless, I did it. That older version of me had connected enough to the younger version of me to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel connected to God, to know that regardless of the pain I was going to face of leaving that relationship, that I could still connect to peace. Yeah. And I did that enough with God to know that, yeah, this is going to hurt really bad and my heart's going to feel shredded, but I know that there's peace in the midst of chaos because I can connect to him. So I left and very unlike me, blocked his number and all of his family's numbers. And it wasn't anything toward him. I just knew I was in a process of growth and I still wasn't strong enough, for lack of a better word, strengthened in the Lord, I guess you could say. To feel like I wouldn't cycle back into that same system, but strong enough to know I needed to establish a boundary, which is something that I really value that y'all brought to my process, is not just the spiritual, let's go in and connect to God and understand emotionally, but what are practical boundaries of walking some of these steps out. So I was not great at establishing boundaries. So for me, that was pivotal, and even just establishing a boundary for myself moving forward. And then from there, I just went on a journey with God and said, I'm still not rooted and grounded in Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd and I shall not want. I want that relationship almost above you. And that's scary to me. So he called me into a 6-month fast of dating, which I had never done before. I never given myself 6 months of not having a guy on my radar, or, you know, that part of me that wanted to, that was my escape. Fantasize who's the next person who's going to make all this pain go away and make it right. I just wanted to sit with myself and to sit with truth, and get it at a heart level where it was authentic. It wasn't just, it sounds good, but no, this is a real woman walking around who can say that this is who I am.
Yeah, it's so good. So good. I mean, it was so much easier for you to stay in that relationship than it would have been for you to leave.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
For people,
yeah.
Based on the amount of work that you had done internally, you learned and decided, like, I'm going to fight, I'm going to put in work, I'm going to take ownership for my stuff. But the things that you had learned before almost made you more codependent when it came down to it, because you're like, I don't want to be the Kristina I was before. And so it's hard for you. Like, it was your inclination to stay and fight until the very, very end, even if it meant that you were devalued, disrespected, even if he never grew, even if none of it worked out. Could you take the chicken out of the oven for me? I'm going to leave this in the interview. I'm making enchiladas tonight, so my chicken is... but it was easier for you to stay than it was for you to leave. And I remember having that chat with you, and you were like, I did it. I left him, and I valued myself, and I stood up for myself, and I just decided that I was done. And I remember for you specifically knowing, like, you just fought for your freedom by walking away. And I've been blown away. First off, I cannot believe it's been 6 months. I'm still floored that your 6-month path of not dating is over. But I have been...
Is there like a line of like 30 guys out the door at this point?
She's like, where are they?
I don't know if they are. They got a list to filter through. I know that.
There's an application for them.
That's right.
I've been so overwhelmed by getting to see the difference, because you were connected to God before. It's not like you didn't know God. You might have avoided him in some areas, but I think we all do that in different seasons for different reasons. But I've been so floored to see how crazy connected to God you've been. And I remember at one point, actually, I was talking to you a couple weeks ago, and you were saying, I didn't know that I could be this connected to God. I didn't know that I would be this strong, that I could be this full, that I would know who I was. And I've just been so amazed to see you in your journey with God in the last 6 months. But would you tell me, like, what are the main things that you've pulled out of this past 6 months of singleness?
That's a really good question. Yeah, when I started it, it was, okay, God, you said this is possible, but I have no idea how that would ever be possible inside of Kristina. I mean, a little background on me, I've had seen like a licensed therapist for several years, and had even seen her in the process and prior to, and, you know, not to put titles around things, but things like love addict and codependent are all in the mix. And so those are pretty big things where at the core, when you're leaving a relationship, I mean, it feels like life or death. It hits that like core heart trigger level of survival. And so to even fathom the idea of being not in a relationship and happy and satisfied and fulfilled and a single mom of 3 felt foreign to me. And so, the process wasn't easy. The grieving process, feeling and sitting with the pain, things that I, in the past, had probably avoided and not done a great job at. And so just sitting with all of that and being okay in the midst of those feelings was definitely probably one of the most valuable lessons that I took out of the 6 months, that pain can't take me out. I'd experienced a lot of pain before, pain from an abortion, a failed marriage, but I will tell you this, the level of this pain felt very different. And really deep for whatever reason. But the fact that you can sit with pain like that and you can move through it, and God can be present in it, not to take it away, but just to be, and you can find rest in that. To me, that's priceless. That's probably one of the most valuable things that I've come out with, because that makes you unstoppable, right? Because I'm going to face pain. I'm going to face hard things, but that was pivotal. So
good.
there was that. And just, I would say even the romance of Jesus. Like, I really thought it sounded so ridiculous to say he's romantic and, oh, he can fill in that spot. He had never really felt in that spot of my heart before. But he was so faithful and so kind. And so I felt, wow, I really can feel satisfied in him in this space of romance, in pursuit, in love. And that was a missing piece. Like you had said, I had experienced God and I felt like a grown woman in many areas. In this area of my heart, I felt like a 2-year-old. I had a lot of growing up to do, of connecting to God and believing truth. So for me now, when I think about dating other people, I can truly say no one will ever be Jesus, but I've experienced love, romantic pursuit, love in a way that sets a new standard for me. That makes me understand. I felt like what that kind of love is supposed to look like and be like, and it's not chaotic. It's pretty peaceful and it's pretty fulfilling. The other thing is I'm a single mom of 3. And so the other thing that I learned is that I can just be content with my kids. And that's probably one of the biggest gifts. I wanted to be there, but I was not there. Yeah. And to be present just in the moment, to take them in, to see them as gifts, where I stopped fantasizing about men or future relationships because I didn't have anyone to project onto with that. So the ability just to be present in the now, and whether that's experiencing God or my kids or myself. And then I had to move a lot of that energy into other things too. So I went after CrossFit. I have a big background, I guess you could say, in fitness and in health, but that was a fear that I'd had and something I wanted to overcome. So really just integrating myself, spirit, soul, and body, and pushing myself through those limits of pain, whether that's physical pain of working out or the pain of grieving or even the unknown, right? I feel like that place of not knowing what was ahead and being okay with the unknown was another big lesson learned, that, you know, I think you can only learn in certain experiences. And this was an experience I got to learn to be okay and content with the unknowns. So
good.
I love it. I think I want to ask a question that I know Sammy had a list of questions and everything, but I wanted to ask a question that might be a little unorthodox, but I know for a lot of women that are watching the content that we are pushing out before signing up for anything that requires an investment, that requires them confronting pain, it's really uncomfortable to experience change. They're trying to build value for the first decision they'll ever make with, like, for their heart, you know, and it's like some of the women that choose into this program, it's the first decision they've ever made for their hearts, investing into themselves ever. And so building value for that at first is really difficult because it's so natural for us to go towards what is certain, what is normal, and what is comfortable. And ultimately our desire and belief in change, like belief that change is possible, has to exceed our desire for comfort and our belief that this is what we get in our lives, you know? So with all that being said, what did it look like in your process? Obviously, we're not the first thing you've ever invested into yourself with. What did your process look like for building value for all of that? For you actually learning to take care of your heart, learning to work through your emotions, learning to go, okay, I need leadership, I need help, I need community, I need like tools and process, like all the way from start to where you're at now. What did that look like?
Love the question. You know, everyone's personality is different, but I think at some point as humans, we hit a threshold where enough is enough. And I'm sick of being sick and tired. I'm sick of pain. I'm sick of going around this mountain 1,000 times. But for me, everything changed the moment that I saw a testimony or someone that was walking in the freedom that I wanted, where it created vision. And I feel like even that's biblical. Without vision, a man perishes. So we're walking backwards and running around mountains until we see, oh, it's actually possible. And I saw that in somebody else, maybe not identical to what I wanted, but a taste of freedom, of emotional health, physical health, all the aspects, right, of living. And so that was a turning point for me where I went, something more is out there that I want. And then I had an insatiable appetite for it, because once I tasted it and I tasted a little bit of freedom, you can't help but want more because it's true and real.
Yeah.
So for me, when I looked at you two, that was a big deal because, you know, I think the power of coaching is not only creating a space for, to hold space for someone for love and the capacity to love and to guide, but it's a walking, living testimony. And I feel like your lives represented that, not only for my ex, which created so much hope, but for me, you know, going through the process of that. These are people ahead of me, and it's possible to get there. So I feel like it's overcoming the lie first, that it's impossible. And the moment you see that it's possible, you only have two choices: to deny it and be a victim, or to choose to overcome and conquer and move forward. So.
Woo! That was a line.
Quote that piece right there.
Is editing this video. Will you please quote her on that? Because that was fire. I would love to hear. My favorite are our clients who have worked with 5 to 20 different counselors and therapists and then do our program. It's my favorite. And we actually have a lot of counselors, therapists, and psychologists that are our clients because they, in the process, they wanted to help other people. And then they realized either what I've been receiving in leadership hasn't been what I needed, or it hasn't helped, or I got into this industry because I wanted to help people and heal people. And then I realized I don't have any of my own freedom and breakthrough to actually give away. I'm just giving away my knowledge.
Yes.
But you're like, what's the difference to you between your experience with us and then your experience with the counselors, therapists, and whoever else you've worked with in the past?
Great.
Yeah, I love that question. And I think you already stated some of those ingredients. One being, authority comes when you've actually walked it out yourself. That's where the power is at. So what I experienced from you two was a history of having walked through the pain, the struggle, and overcome. And so what you bring is not only your experience, but a lot of authority and power spiritually to that. So that being one. And it's not talk therapy. If you go and you look at a lot of different aspects of therapy and things that are available, I love it all. I think there's a place for it, but nothing can replace experiential moments where you are directing people to connect with God and to connect with love and to connect with truth. And time again, I felt like what I experienced and what I saw you in your coaching is you're just redirecting people back to experiencing God and love and truth, and moving yourselves out of the way. And then on a practical level, the relational skill sets of boundaries and how to relationally walk things out. But above all, I felt like with you two, your authenticity and your vulnerability to share not only your own lives, which you don't get a lot in some of the other secular areas where people are sharing and kind of walking you through what they've gone through, but the continual just direction back to God of identifying, I'm not a silver bullet. I don't have all the answers, but I know the one who does, and the ability to guide people back there. Ultimately, I feel like is what separates you from 99% of the world. So that was big, you know, just equipping people with skill sets to walk out with that. I now have a refrigerator full of things that I can go in and grab when I need them. And I don't need Sammy and Spencer. I got my own refrigerator full.
Yes. Goals.
That's the goal. Honestly,
that's literally why we made the program.
I love that because so many, there's two problems with one-on-one that I see. And what I won't do is just say one-on-one is bad at all whatsoever. Right. I think there's a context for having one-to-one leadership and relationships for sure, 100%. But one of the main problems you identified is it creates a dependency.
Right.
If every single piece of healing you've ever gotten was in a room with a person that you have to pay in order to get it, then 2 years down the road, when you haven't actually made those processes and tools your own, you will require that person to be there in order to sustain that breakthrough. And it's exposed ultimately. And then, you know,
reliant and dependent.
And then the other, and with that, in order for that counselor to still have a business, when the business is built for one-on-one, in order for that counselor to have to continue making money, they actually have to create a scenario where they're needed. And so that's always going to function. When my needs require someone to have to be here, then it's actually gonna unfold in tiny micro biases that I'm not even aware of. And so
Great.
those are the main problems I see. And unfortunately, that's not what's real freedom. Real freedom is going, I'm going to give you everything that I possibly can and not teach you what to think, but teach you how to think, so that you can actually make whatever ceiling that we've hit and what we have to give you as leaders, you can make that your floor, take all of your history in addition to that ceiling that we've given you, and then now build that for the people that you're going to lead and influence.
So preach. Whoop, whoop.
I would love to hear, and I think it's my last question. If you have any after, that's fine.
I might have one.
I would love to hear, you're older than both of us. How old are you?
39, girl.
You're 39. So you've got almost 10 years.
That's the first time I knew that, and I don't believe it.
You're hot.
I'll take it.
Mom alert.
Hot mom. Hot mom. So you're about 10 years older than Spencer, and you're 14 years older than me. What's that like for you? Is that weird? Like all I've ever experienced from you is complete humility. You've shown us so much honor, so much love, but I can tell we're not in your God spot. I can tell we're not on a pedestal. You just have done a wonderful job at showing up and being you and learning and receiving and growing. But what's that been like for you, having an age gap? What's your experience with that?
It truthfully has never crossed my mind. But when I think about it, you know, I think the moment that we feel like we can't learn from someone, we have a problem. That's the problem. So, you know, unfortunately, the majority of my life, I didn't have the skills to walk through these scenarios of life well, or to know how to not repeat patterns. And so age is irrelevant. To me, it really comes down to who's actually walked the process out and overcome it. And so for me, that was never a scenario that I ever look at, older, same age, or younger. It's who's walked the walk and who is able to guide me through a process that they've already done themselves. And I would also say this, the other thing that you two carry is the fact that you still have your own accountability and you're still going after your own growth with your own leaders. And so, you know, I think that it would be a disservice if age were ever a factor. I would say that's probably an ego check, and I would find out what the block is and where the lie is at, that you feel like there's something that you can't be imparted by, where age is a factor.
That's good.
People are going to be getting convicted listening to you talk.
The way I see it too is, I'm like, if you have done marketing for 3 years and you have specific systems that work for this industry, this industry, this industry, this industry, I'm going to learn you regardless of this 60-year-old over here that's done it wrong for 20 years that has no results.
Yeah.
It's like, I just don't care. I'm going to choose this guy because he has results. This person over here who carries this, like, I see our clients and I'm like, they carry things that we don't have. And I'm like, so if I needed what they had in this area, I'd posture myself to receive and learn from them in that area. You know, I'm always going to be searching out the best with what people actually carry. It's why we don't have a program on raising your children. Because I don't know, I'm still raising myself, you know, like, I'm still cleaning my own poop every once in a while in our marriage, you know? And so I love your input on that. I think it's so accurate.
And we have so much, it's fun for me because I have so much honor and respect for who you are and the decisions you've made, what you've gone after. And I know that there are so many areas where you could give both of us leadership, but I've so thoroughly enjoyed just your posture with us. It just makes everything feel so fun and like such a gift. And I wanted to ask that question because I know there are women who are in their 50s and in our 60s that are looking into our program. And we don't even target older women. We target women in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. But I just wanted to address that because I know that that can be a factor for some people. But I love that you're like, that's an ego check right there. Yeah. I love it. Okay, I'm done asking questions. Your turn.
I actually don't know if I have any other questions either. This has been so just filled with good stuff. Yeah. I guess, like, what would be your recommendation or advice to someone that was just exploring this for the first time?
Oh, that's a fun one. Just exploring it for the first time. Meaning emotional, heart work in general?
Anything, yeah, not specifically our program, but the process or the journey.
I think it's always important to sit with yourself and to get really clear on what you want. Because if you're blindly walking into something and you're not identifying, why am I doing this? You don't have the why behind it. Your will's going to run out. You're going to be walking into something without intention and without clarity. And I feel like that's a recipe for disaster. So I would get really clear on what you want, and then find out who has what you want. And then go get it.
I feel like we just need to quote card you through this whole. I love the way you communicate and articulate yourself.
Seriously.
But it's the byproduct of what's inside of you. And so I love hearing you share. Thank you so much for. Do you have anything else?
I don't have anything. I just don't want to end because I'm enjoying this so much.
You're so. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Yeah.
And more than that, thanks for giving us your trust. Like, you've given us so much trust, and it feels like just such an honor and such a gift to be able to be a source of love in your life. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it would be hard to find words to monetize or qualify what you guys have done in my life, but there's something truly priceless about changing the path of someone's life, changing the course of not just mine, but I've always said I have 3 kids behind me, right, who are following it, and affects them too. And so y'all have literally changed the course of my life for the better, and the path and the trajectory of my life. And that's invaluable to me. So I just thank you. I thank you for fighting and doing what y'all have done in your own lives, and just being a testament and a living example of what's possible.